What's going on, everybody? It's March 26, 2018. Hope you all had a good weekend. Today we're going to be talking about breaking down a mix into three basic parts. You got the width, the depth, and the height. What we're going to cover first is the width. Now, how do you obtain width in a mix? Every song you hear is going to have some form of this called panning. Panning is moving a sound or a signal anywhere on the spectrum from 100% left to 100% right in the speaker's mix, right? So, first off, what I like to do when I'm panning, everything is right now set dead center, and I play the song. And now as the song's playing, I kind of like to picture some type of phantom between the speakers, alright? Now, depending on how well placed your speakers are, if you have studio monitors, you should have either a strong illusion of a sound or maybe a kind of a weaker sound. And if you move around your speakers, you actually can adjust that, fix that. Maybe you just have it in the wrong spot in the room. A lot of times it's not where it visually looks right, it's because depending on how the room shapes. So, you know, a lot of times just messing around with how the speakers are pointed in your room, you can find a really full signal. Excuse me. So, with that said, you know, you want to try to envision a phantom of the sound. So, you know, I see colors a lot of the times when I'm mixing a song. So I'll see colors of red, blue, maybe yellow, orange. And basically, while I'm panning, I try to find the most inspiring sound, you know. So if I'm panning the guitar right, it might sound a little dull, but all of a sudden I pan that same guitar to the left, and it just comes to life. The song, it sounds brighter. Maybe it just seems, something feels right about where it's panned right there. So, you know, then I'll move on to the next sound. And I try to do this very quick. You know, one thing I realized about mixing over the years is that it's a race against time. The more time you spend on the mix, a lot of the times there's like a certain threshold that you break, like maybe a 12-hour mark, or like depending on how your ears are, like an 8-hour mark or a 20-hour mark, whatever it may be. You break that threshold, the mix just starts getting worse, you know, and you might be, a lot of new engineers might do this a lot of times, where they just, you know, mix the song non-stop trying to get it perfect, you know, which isn't going to happen. And a lot of the times they just start making the mix sound muddier. They do too much. I know I'm guilty of that a lot of times when I first started out. And so, you know, it's really good to try to picture each instrument. So if there's a piano, try to picture some type of shape or a color. That's what I mean by a phantom. You know, it's like you could tell if the signal of the sound is like strong, blaring out the speaker, as opposed to like something just sounds thin, kind of like grainy, weak, you know. So when you're mixing, if you have weak speakers, if you could get that sounding really strong, then you're doing something right. Because then if you're playing on a good sound source, imagine how much better it's even going to sound, you know? So, that's just some food for thought. What we're going to be talking about first is width. So, you know, you're panning, you could go left, right. A lot of times, what I like to do is first establish if I want a full mix or if I want a clean mix. So, if I'm going for a symmetrical mix, that's going to be a full mix. That means I'll pan something hard left, pan something hard right. I'll pan something maybe 50 to the left, 50 to the right, or leave it in the center, you know? So what that does is going to create a full mix. Now, some people might argue, well, your mix sounds kind of messy, but that's just going to be one of the natural consequences of obtaining a full mix, is that it's just going to probably have some messiness to it, because the sounds might not exactly be so clean, separated in their own space, but they sound full and it sounds alive, you know. So that, if that's what you're going for, cool. Now, the other option is an asymmetrical mix or a clean mix. That means panning, you know, one instrument 50 to the left, the other instrument, maybe a piano or accompanying harmony, panning that 48 to the right or 62 to the left, to the right. You know, odd numbers, you know, even on one side, on the other, you know, whatever you feel like. It doesn't really matter. But if you're working with a lot of layers, say like a harmony, and you have 6 layers, if you pan each individual layer of the harmony its own number, you will hear of a cleaner version of that. Opposed to if you pan them all symmetrically, you'll get more of a fuller mix. But like I said, it might not be as detailed. The cleaner panning will sound more detailed, but it might sound empty, and that's the natural consequence of that. So you just kind of have to pick your poison there. Panning's a lot of fun. It's a very creative process, you know. You could stack stuff so, you know, maybe you hear all the mid-range instruments and you pan all the mid-range instruments to one side, and you pan all the high-range instruments to the other side and leave all the low-range in the middle. You know, that's one kind of idea. You can also pan it so the brightest instruments are on the outside or the widest in the mix, and the lowest instruments could be somewhere in the middle, you know, and you can actually, by middle I mean 50 to the right, 50 to the left, something like that, and then you can have maybe the mid-range instruments dead center. Yes. So yeah, when you're panning, pan based off of the emotional feeling, or the musical feeling, sorry. So, you know, if it feels like you're making this cool jazz song, or you have a jazz song, you have like a piano, a vocalist, maybe an upright bass, and some like a snare, a kick. What you could do is maybe try to envision yourself sitting at a table in a jazz lounge. Kind of envision the stage, and then you could try to pan for that. So maybe there's like a grand piano on the right side of the stage, and then the upright bass is right next to the piano, but the drummer is in the center, and the singer, she's standing on the other side by maybe there's also a backup singer, so maybe you put them on the other side. You know, you could do, this is where you could kind of experiment. You listen to old Beatles songs, and the panning is wild. You know, you have like all the drums hardcore to the right. You have the vocalist maybe all the way to the left, John Lennon or Paul McCartney. And, you know, it was just times are different, and they were using analog, so it was a little bit of different idea. And I think they were just playing around with just stereo effects, or trying to get stereo, whatever the case was. I never really looked into it. But you listen to stuff today, like a Travis Scott song, and the panning is crazy. You'll have like the ad-libs going from right to left. You'll hear panning on the reverb itself, on the special effects. You'll also hear, you know, instruments pan in certain places. The whole idea of panning is to get it to occupy its own space, right? So if we're doing that, we're going to be creating pockets. And so a good concept to understand is that you kind of want to leave holes in the mix, and those holes are going to be filled in by air. You know, so when it's playing, say it's playing, it gets the opportunity to be played in clubs if it's a hit or something like that. Those pockets will be filled in by the club itself. Now, if the mix is too compact, you know, it's going to sound busy, it's going to sound cluttered in a club, or it's going to sound cluttered in a car, or when it gets, you know, played through headphones, or played through on a cell phone. You know, so the idea is you definitely want to be trying to get a full wide mix, if that's what the kind of song you're going for. You know, heavy metal, listen to it. The guitars are panned hard right, hard left. You listen to old school hip hop, maybe everything's just dead center. You know, maybe that was like the whole point of being raw. But that's where goes back to being creative. You can even express emotions through the panning. You know, like I was saying about the Travis Scott song, how you have something going from left to right. You know, that kind of, you're driving your car and you hear that, that might be a cool event that you remember in the song. You know, it also kind of creates the illusion of space. It creates the illusion of movement, you know. It creates all different types of experiences, even in the subconscious, you know, that we're not even really paying attention to. But those are the details, and, you know, a lot of times the devil's in the details. You really break down a mix, you'll see, like, I always thought this song was, there's a lot of reverb, but you listen to it on the speakers and you realize that it's wide less because of the effects, and it's wide because of where it's placed with volume and the panning. You know, so let's see, anything else I want to cover today about this? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I'm going to be talking about for panning today. What we're going to be, I wish we had a little bit more time. I would get into the other two. We're going to be, in the next video, I'll be talking about depth. Now, depth is the second principle, I would say, for mixing a song. What that entails is volume, using plugins, and yeah, depth is actually probably my favorite part of mixing. So yeah, if you like this video, give it a like. I'm gonna be getting my Facebook video page up soon, so I'll be reposting all these videos up on there, as well as my YouTube channel. So I'll be sharing links soon, everybody. Until next time, have a good time, alright? Bye.